Let me ask you something. What if the single biggest threat to our world isn't a weapon or some political ideology, but just an attitude, a way of thinking that, once it really takes root, can actually rot a civilization from the inside out? Well, today, we're going to dig into the work of a philosopher who saw this very threat coming nearly a century ago.
And that philosopher is José Ortega y Gasset. Now, when you hear philosopher, don't picture some guy in a tweed jacket just poking holes in other people's ideas. Ortega wasn't about tearing things down. No, he was a builder. He wanted to construct a whole new way for us to understand our reality.
You know the type, right? The philosophical demolition crew. They're brilliant at deconstruction, at telling you why everything is wrong. But if you ask them, okay, so what should we build instead? Crickets. Ortega was the total opposite. He looked at the old intellectual foundations, saw they were crumbling, and decided it was time to get his hands dirty and build something new.
So what was the first big wall he needed to tear down to make room for his new project? Oh, it was a huge one. It's this idea that goes all the way back to René Descartes. The idea that your mind, your consciousness, you, are somehow separate from the physical world you live in. Ortega said, nope, that's a huge fundamental mistake.
And that brings us to his most important, most groundbreaking concept. It's a radical rethink of who we are and our relationship to, well, everything. Honestly, once you really get this idea, it kind of changes how you see everything.
And here it is. This is his most famous quote, and it sums up his whole philosophy. I am I and my circumstance, and if I do not save it, I do not save myself. It sounds beautiful, almost poetic, but it's also a dead serious philosophical claim. So let's unpack that really important word, circumstance.
See, for Ortega, your circumstance isn't just the stuff around you, it is you. It's your physical body, your height, your health. It's your social situation, where you were born, how much money your family had, your level of education. And, so crucially, it's the specific moment in history you were just dropped into, a story that started long before you got here.
This really puts the two views side by side. You've got Descartes on one hand, saying, I think, therefore I am, right? The mind exists on its own, but Ortega just flips it completely. For him, it's more like, we live, therefore we think. Our thinking doesn't happen in a vacuum, it's a direct result of our life in the world. You can't separate the two.
And okay, this idea, it comes with some serious homework. It creates this huge new responsibility. If you are your circumstance, then knowing your world, your history, your culture, your society, that's not just an academic exercise. It's the only way to truly know yourself. Being apathetic about the state of the world, that's actually a form of self-neglect. You have to engage, because saving your world is quite literally saving yourself.
So, what happens when people do the exact opposite? When they totally ignore their circumstance? Well, this is where Ortega's thinking turns into a pretty chilling prophecy. He identified this dangerous new psychological type that he saw emerging everywhere, a type he called the mass man.
Ortega had this incredible image for this person. He said they were like mere buoys that float on the waves, just bobbing around, passive, drifting, not directing themselves, just being carried along by whatever current is strongest.
Now let me be super clear about this. Mass man has nothing to do with being rich or poor. It's not a social class. It is a mindset. It's a psychological profile defined by being totally satisfied with yourself, feeling entitled to everything, and having zero gratitude for the civilization that you inherited. So what does this look like? Well, the mass man feels no need to get any better. They think their opinion is automatically valid just because it popped into their head. No need for research or hard thinking. They take all the rights and technologies that took centuries of struggle to build completely for granted. They are, in his words, the spoiled child of modernity, handed a magnificent inheritance with no clue how to maintain it.
And get this, he wasn't writing this on some blog last week. He published his major warning, The Revolt of the Masses, all the way back in 1929. He called this mindset a dangerous infestation, right before one of the most catastrophic decades in human history. Talk about prescient.
This line, it's just chillin'. He called the mass man the new barbarian, but it's a weird kind of barbarian. This person might be a specialist, an engineer, a doctor, whatever.
They're more learned in their little corner of the world than anyone has ever been. But at the same time, they are profoundly uncultured, totally ignorant of the history and philosophy that made their own profession and their whole world possible.
And here we get to the terrifying bottom line. Ortega argued that this mindset, this toxic stew of arrogance, entitlement, and historical amnesia, it creates the perfect psychological environment. It's like a petri dish, just waiting for authoritarianism and fascism to grow.
Okay, so if the mass man is the sickness, what's the cure? Well, Ortega offers a really powerful antidote, and it's not a political party or a 5-point plan. It's a personal mission. It's a call to live a more demanding, more noble life by understanding our real connection to the past.
He calls this antidote a self-imposed aristocracy. Now hang on, this has nothing to do with lords and ladies or a ruling class. It's an internal thing. It's a personal commitment you make to yourself. A commitment to a life of effort, of holding yourself to a higher standard, of feeling a deep responsibility to improve yourself and your world. It is the absolute opposite of the mass man's lazy self-satisfaction.
And it all comes down to this absolutely revolutionary idea. Human beings don't have a nature. They have a history. Just let that sink in for a second. We aren't defined by some fixed biological essence. We are what has happened. We are the sum total of our past experiences, choices, and inherited memories.
Think of it like this. Every word has an etymology, right? A history that gives it its meaning. Well, you have an etymology too. It's made up of your personal memories, sure, but it's also your family story, it's the history of your country, it's all the big historical events that shaped the world you were born into. All of that is the history that makes you, you.
So what that means is that studying history isn't just a hobby. For Ortega, it is the ultimate act of self-knowledge. It's how you tap into all those unlived memories that are just as much a part of you as the ones you can personally recall. To understand your history is to finally understand who you are.
Which brings us right back to the beginning, to the final, challenging question that Ortega leaves for every one of us. You're not outside of the world, and you're not outside of history. You are living in it right now. So, the only question that really matters is, are you going to be an active participant, someone who strives to save their circumstance? Or are you just going to be a spectator, a buoy floating on the waves? The choice is yours.